Hey guys, since the Yamato vs. Iowa series is over, I thought I would start a new series, which I think will be sort of what if series, where I would take a significant battle, like the Battle of Savo Island or Midway, that's a bit cliched though, or Guadalcanal, and see what would happen if certain things had gone differently. Like what if Mikawa, who was the commanding officer of the Japanese fleet at Savo Island, had been a bit more aggressive in his actions. Because as you know, the defeat of the U.S. forces was catastrophic, but there was little strategic effect because Mikawa refused to go after the transports, which is if he had regrouped his rather scattered forces and gone for an assault on the transports themselves, they would have been destroyed with little ill effect to the Japanese forces. As to why he didn't do that, it was a combination of lack of intelligence on whether or not the U.S. forces were in the area and how powerful they were, as well as the lack of organization within the actual fleet, because after the battle they had been disorganized, and I believe the figure for the time it would have taken for them to regroup and to form a cohesive battle line would have been around an hour to an hour and a half, which was plenty of time for the U.S. carrier forces in the area to be on alert for attack at first light. But the carriers had withdrawn from Guadalcanal the day before, and therefore would have been unavailable to use as attack platforms for U.S. carrier-based aircraft. So let's see. What if after Savo Island, Mikawa had chosen the more aggressive route and had regrouped his forces to attack and destroy the rest of the scattered U.S. forces in the area, and then had moved on to destroy the transports as well. Even though his force consisted of only 5 heavy cruisers, of which 4 were the 6-gun cruisers and not the 10-gun cruisers, considering the forces that were left in the U.S. fleet and had already been sunk, I think that he would destroy the rest of the U.S. fleet, which was pretty much just destroyers, a few stragglers left behind, and I believe a heavily damaged cruiser, if I'm not mistaken. And after clearing through the remnants of the U.S. force, the U.S. fleet, he would have had a clear line straight toward the transports. And the transports, if I recall correctly, were disorganized and were all cramped up into one little place, which would have meant that a bombardment through high explosive shells against the transports loaded up with supplies, men, equipment for the poorly organized and defended beachhead would have been pretty goddamn devastating. Like, because the beachhead was poorly established, and all that was really there was a couple thousand men at the beach, and all the supplies and the equipment that they would need to mount their assault on Guadalcanal back on the transports. And so you take out the transports, you pretty much destroy any chance of the U.S. establishing a strong beachhead on Guadalcanal. And this would have allowed the Japanese to mount a pretty powerful counteroffensive on the beaches. As Churchill said, was it Churchill? We will fight them at the beaches. It's kind of like that, except it wasn't really on an island scale, and it was really the Japanese, and it wasn't the British. Yeah. Anyway, so on a battle level, I think the effect would have been pretty negligible, because all that would have really changed was the loss of maybe 1 or 2 more destroyers on either side, and then you have the destruction of the transports, which technically isn't that big of a deal. But on a much larger scale, like a few weeks scale, the effect would have been pretty, I don't know, moderate to high, because let's face it, the U.S. forces that were already there are facing a battle with no supplies, or little supplies, and almost no equipment, and the rest of the reinforcements are gone. On a campaign level, it would have been decisive, because you're losing the bulk of the initial assault that the U.S. are mounting. But on a war level, like how much it would affect the entire war, I think the effect would have been, again, somewhere between moderate and high, because the Guadalcanal campaign was the first step in the U.S.'s island hopping campaign. You lose Guadalcanal, you lose a major foothold on the Japanese empire. So overall, I think that if Mikawa had been more aggressive after the Battle of Savo Island had gone on to destroy the transports, then the U.S. Army or Marines would have had a much harder time defending their position from Japanese attack, and would therefore have been defeated. He probably would have won the Guadalcanal campaign for the Japanese, but would they have won the war? Probably not. Now, of course, you're looking at the pretty much the removal of all the other subsequent battles, which were part of the Guadalcanal campaign, like the loss of Hie and Kirishima, maybe. And a lot of the fighting in the Solomons would have been postponed or pretty much just wouldn't have happened, which put and historically that whole campaign, the Solomons Island campaign, put a really big strain on the logistical skills. That makes sense. Of the Japanese army and navy, because lots of destroyers were lost in what was called the Tokyo Express, which was the high-speed transport system used by where destroyers instead of transports would ferry small parcels of supplies to island garrisons, and plenty of destroyers were lost in this pretty useless system. So thanks for watching. It was pretty short, but that's what I think would have happened had Mikawa been more aggressive in his actions after Savo Island. Post down below what you think would have happened, right? And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye.